Witness is Mr. Abdulhakim Idris, who will give evidence in person. Good afternoon.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Idris was born in Patan City, educated in Islamic religion in underground madrasa in Khotan, and then went to Al-Azhar University in Egypt and then settled in Germany. He's a co-founder of World Uyghur Youth Congress, and he's the executive director of Center for Uyghur Studies and a general inspector of World Uyghur Congress. Mr. Idris is the author of the book called Menace, about the China's colonization of the Islamic world and Uyghur genocide. Welcome to Uyghur Tribunal, Mr. Idris. I understand you have a PowerPoint that you would like to present. The tribunal has read your report, and I would appreciate if you make it as short as possible, but 10 minutes would be welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My research has been mostly on how China used their economic might to buy silence of nations that would be expect to be allied with the Uyghur Muslims. These being primary Muslim majority countries, usually we would expect to hear pronounced outcry against the Uyghur genocide. But we didn't hear it. Still, in East Turkestan, there were copies of Qur'ans burnt, mosques turned into bars, the kids educated in atheist schools. Still, we didn't hear any word from any Muslim leader or any Muslim institution, or we didn't see any demonstration in majority Islamic country. Next slide, please. China, to use this information in Islamic countries, they use several arguments. First is internal affairs discourse. They saying since the occupation of East Turkestan 1949, it is internal matters. Nobody should interfere in our issues. Second is they're using language about extremism, religious extremism. Actually, in Chinese eyes, the three evils are religious extremism, separatism, terrorism. Those three aspects is designed to entire population put in the box. And this is working in Islamic countries because they are against religious extremism, separatism, and they have terrorism problems. Third is using propaganda. China used Chinese Islamic Association to tell all the Muslim countries, leaders and institutions, telling them, we are fine. We just have problem with extremist people. They held a press conference, seminars in abroad in Muslim countries. And they're using Hajj pilgrims like a diplomacy. And they inviting many governmental and the civil societies, Muslim leaders to East Turkestan, pre-arranged mosque to show them this is fine. So if you, for example, if you look, I'm actually studied in Al-Azhar and I'm very closely following the Islamic news outlets around the world. We don't find any reports about the tragedy in East Turkestan. For example, in Egypt, there is the Al-Akhbar, Akhbar al-Yom newspaper. This is the second newspaper after Al-Ahram. In this newspaper, there is a page bought by the Chinese embassy. News from China will every day, like a miracle, sold for the Egyptian people. So these governmental media outlets cannot report about the Uyghur issue properly or nothing happening there. I am, next slide, please. No, one before, yes. And the CCP using vaccines and the mask diplomacy to get those countries under Chinese influence. For example, it was in Turkey a more outcry about this Uyghur genocide by the opposition parties. The Chinese delayed to distribute its vaccine to Turkey. In the Lebanon is a very sectarian country. There is a Hezbollah. They working like a branch of CCP, but there is a Sunni media outlets. They were talking about Uyghur issue, and the government couldn't support China openly, and Chinese government delayed vaccine distribution there too. In the many countries around the world to bring under control. So I am in 10 minutes very hurry because I prepared 15 minutes slide, and I'm ready after that to answer your question. Next slide, please. So, as you heard before, many colleagues testified before me. They said China treating Uzbekistan and the Uyghur people like a colonial threat. I was born there, I went to school there, and I'm almost 30 years closely analyzing, studying their decisions, their implementation, their education system. They built a Bing Tuan in our country, like a Bing Tuan is XPCC, semi-military company, like an East Indian company, were built by the British in India. And they're controlling almost 90% of East Turkestan economy, roads, waters, energy, and resources. So they can put more than 3 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. This BRI is one version of the Bing Tuan in Islamic countries. They have a really nice name, win-win, connect the people to people, serve the mankind. Those are the slogan by the CCP. But reality is very tragical. This Silk Road, the BRI had three contents: Silk Road economic build, the 21st century maritime Silk Road, and digital Silk Road. I skip the details to next slide, please. I was asked to concentrate by the counselor on Central Asian and Middle East country. So I will talk about this issue. First, I will talk about Iran. As you know, Iran's Islamic Republic of Iran, their constitution, the second, third paragraphs are to be about the Muslim worldwide, to protect them, to serve for God. But if you look what the Iranian regime did with China, you can see it. Especially the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, when he was president of Iran, he was once president. He visited Kashgar. He went to Eitka Mosque. He prayed there. And he said, when I was that time in Egypt, he said, when I was studied in Qom, I read a lot of poems about Kashgar. I wished I visited, my dream come true. Why I talk this? Because Iranian supreme leaders knows what's happened right now in East Turkestan. Knows what the China's doing on war on Islam, on faith. It's not war between Muslim and Christian. It's not war between Jewish and Muslims. It's war on entire religion. Christianity, Buddhism, especially Islam. Even Iranian didn't hear it. And they closed 400 billion agreement with China next 25 years. China building their roads, infrastructure. They installing their Huawei system, 5G networks, and many more. What's the Huawei systems mean for the China? It means they can know and monitor every word, every aspect where they install this Huawei system. In Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made perfectly clear he sees China as a key fulcrum to his 2030 vision. He wants to build Saudi Arabia and modernize it. And China investing right now in Saudi Arabia more than 93 billion US dollars, including drone factory near Riyadh. After MBS visited China, he gave a statement on Chinese TV. Says China has right to security to counter terrorism efforts against so-called religious extremism. And China showed this every corner of the East Turkestan, telling the Uyghur people, even Saudi Arabia supported what we are doing here. Next is Gulf countries. There's Kuwait's a dream of economic free zones, and Emiratis, they desire to work with China very closely. There is Confucius Institutes. They learning, educating their kids in Chinese Mandarin, and singing in the anniversary of 100 years CCP's day. Recently in Dubai, there were a secret internment prison to keep Uyghurs in Dubai, in Emirat. This is all after they deported or they didn't exceeded the passports or residency in the Dubai. If you look in Central Asia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, in the Emirates, there were many Uyghur business people. They were doing business with the local people. They have partners in China, Chinese companies. After Xi Jinping began this genocide against the Uyghurs, they lost their entire business. Right now,
Mr. Idris, the time is running out.
Okay.
Can you speed up, please?
Okay. Next slide, please. I already done. Next, please. Okay. I talk about Egypt. Egypt has very good relationship with China. They building around the Suez Canal free economic zones. Which president is sitting in the palace, they had good relationship. Even the Muslim Brotherhood President Mohammed Mursi, when he was president, he went first to China. After him comes Sisi, he is doing business with China. And Egypt deported 2017 many students. They were studying in Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar University is the oldest Islamic institution in the world. They deported Uyghur students back to China. As you see, investment. This is nice word, but that is not investment of a Chinese version. It's corruption, disinformation. This is security, diplomacy pressure. They have right now military presence in Tajikistan. They have many military personnel under name security companies in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. Whatever happened in Kyrgyzstan, as we know, there's many change in governments, but nothing changed for the China. It seems they are in control right now. Next slide, please. I should talk a little bit about Afghanistan, Taliban, and Islamic organization, very shortly. China has very close relationship with Pakistani military and in security apparatus. And Pakistani military can choose their government how they choose, we know it. The Taliban had, since its foundation, very good relationship with China. Even 1998, Chinese ambassador to Pakistan met with the Taliban's founder Mullah Umar in Kandahar. In 2000, before 2000, they deported 13 Uyghurs from Afghanistan to China. Recently, the Taliban announced Mohammed Hassan Akhund will be prime minister of this Taliban government. He was at the time when the Taliban deported Uyghurs. And everybody knows today what the Taliban seeking close relationship with China and China doing the same. And there's two organizations. One was designed to repress Uyghurs in abroad, the Shanghai Cooperation Organizations. Since its establishment, the resolution, if we look the resolution analyzed, it's just meant against the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs have border with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan. But there is no one can flee those countries. If they flee those countries, even in Pakistan, they give them back. So the Uyghur refugee, what we today have in Turkey, they went through China, went to Southeast Asia, come those countries. What means that? That means those Central Asian countries already under Chinese control. Even Hüseyincan Jalil was one is a Canadian citizen, was deported from Uzbekistan to China. He's sentenced for life prison, sitting in prison today. And the other organization is Islamic Cooperation of Islamic Organization, OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They, 2019, early 2019, there were a delegation. They went to Turkestan, Kashgar, Dawançin, Ürümçi. In this delegation, there were some diplomats from Central Asia, especially from Kazakhstan. They came back and they did a resolution to condemn this situation in Turkestan. It was in the Dubai summit. The China interferes through Saudi Arabia and the Pakistan changed those resolutions to support China's genocidal policy in Turkestan. That's what's happened.
Mr. Sabi,
Excuse me a minute. Thank you.
Mr. Sabi, I believe there was, first of all, we have to understand that this witness has a commitment, nothing wrong with that. to the World Uyghur Congress, and we of course take that into account. We've all read his report, and I believe there were some particular facts you wanted to highlight, because I discussed it with you. But if he's covered them, then it might be time for the panel to have an opportunity to make their questions.
I guess so. If there is any time at the end, I will ask those questions, but otherwise I yield that to the panel.
Yes, thank you.
There will be
Professor
questions from the panel now.
Yes. Just before you start, Professor Kaur, Mr. Idris, we are drawing you to a close now to answer questions. We fully understand your commitment to the cause and the passion with which you speak, but you must understand that we are completely dispassionate, and you will be asked questions of fact, and it will help us if you are able to be as matter of fact as possible.
Okay.
Thank you for your testimony. Could I begin with a question about yourself? You grew up in Xinjiang and you left a few decades ago. Why did you leave, and when was that?
As you know, my testimony is all politics, because I am a victim of Chinese policies in East Turkestan. I left East Turkestan in 1986 after my parents put me in underground madrasa, studied 5 years in hotel, because at that time the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, so China gave us a little bit freedom to build our mosque, learn a little bit about our religion. So I went to underground mosque, underground madrasa. My teacher were be prison in Chinese prison over 20 years. He taught us, and he teach us, and I learned by him. And then my parents, actually, that was my wish, because if you sit in madrasa, read the books, you know, first to come in the mind is Al-Azhar, Cairo, Al-Azhar University in Cairo. This is every Muslim's desire to go there to learn the Islamic beliefs. So my parents managed to send me to abroad to study there. I studied 4 years in Egypt. After that, I thought I get out. It was one-way ticket, because we couldn't go back to East Turkestan. So then we immigrated to Europe. I came to Germany at the end of 1990s.
You couldn't go back because you feared for your safety, you might be detained?
1989, from Egypt, we went to Hajj to Saudi Arabia. And there were many people from East Turkestan came to Hajj. But with them was a scholar. We know him in our city in hotel. And he was very close to our teacher. We sat in Arafat, more than 17 students from Pakistan at the time and from Egypt. And he told us, you know what? We did big mistake. We sent you to abroad to study. If you come back, you have 2 ways. One is you will teach true religion in our country. You will put in the jail, or you will dead. Our people never benefit from you. Or you will cooperate with Chinese government, and that is in that case, our people will never benefit from your studies, and maybe you will go to hell. And it was like a stone in our heads. And we figured out almost 1 year. At that time, the Soviet Union were still there. And we decided, okay, we have to go to West, to Europe, to Australia, to America, to bring our case in the world. That was my journey.
Thank you. So to return to your testimony, you say in 2019, at the UN Human Rights Council, 27 countries issued a letter flattering China for its successes on human rights, and then it increased to 50. So can you elaborate on, first of all, these 37 countries that supported their human rights record and the increase to 50?
Yes, in 2019, it was almost 2 years. More than millions of people were in jail. 2019, it was 2 years. I didn't spoke my parents. As me, thousands of Uyghur people lost contact with their loved one. At that time, 22 countries wrote a letter to support, condemn China's policy in East Turkestan. And there were almost 30 some countries supporting China's policies. It increased almost 50 to 57. I think one is withdraw his signature in Qatar. The rest are the 50 countries. If you look, there is a list in my report. Most of them are Muslim countries, majority Muslim countries. The 22 countries they supported Uyghurs are America, UK, and Western countries. And recently joined just one Muslim, we call it Muslim country or Muslim lives there, Bosnia and Herzegovina. The rest of them are all non-Muslim countries supporting condemning the Chinese policy in East Turkestan.
So are they all countries, the ones who support China, are they all countries with BRI investments?
Of course, there are BRI investment, and if you look what they have to go along with China is, first of all, there are all authoritarian regimes. Second is there are some of them member of the BRI. Third is China's disinformation and the United Front plus Chinese embassies working very well. And so they get the support through this initiative.
You talk about these countries exchanging blacklists. Can you elaborate on what you mean by blacklists?
Yes, the blacklist is designed to get each other the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's members. There are 8 countries right now in Central Asia. And they have many resolutions. There's a Shanghai resolution against extremism, terrorism, separatism. And they agreed to bring a black list in an exchange with them. For example, China tell Kazakhstan those persons are terrorists or they have criminal economic criminal record. We want them back, or you arrest them for us. And in practice, Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan can say the same. But mostly it was to bring the Uyghurs under control, especially if you look Kazakhstan, there are many 100,000 Uyghurs living there, almost 100 years. And Kyrgyzstan, there were many Uyghurs living there. So after the Soviet collapsed, China jumped up to establish this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and through this, and they announced the BRI again.
And these countries do all or most have extradition treaties with the PRC? And if they do they, when they're requested for certain people, they deport them unquestioningly? That's a question.
I think the Shanghai, what I saw and then analyzed and in the reports, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's member doesn't need extradition treaty because they already agreed on this organization to cooperate and arrest and deport each other. But China tried to get extradition treaty with several BRI countries. For example, right now, one person sitting in Moroccan custody recently, the Morocco want to deport him to China, Hassan Idris, his name is. but the legal process still going on in Morocco. And Morocco had 2016 extradition treaty with China.
So, for instance, in the Morocco case, in Morocco itself, they are going through legal procedures regarding the person in question. So that person may not be extradited. Is that the case? Is this what you're saying?
It's possible in Morocco, but not it's possible in Central Asian, in some Middle East Arabic country.
And the reason being?
Reason being because, for example, the Emiratis are very cooperative with the Chinese government, and the Central Asian countries are, of course, binding their hand in the Shanghai Cooperation Treaties. And even Egypt has deported many Uyghurs. And in Saudi Arabia, there were many Uyghurs living in Medina, in the Mecca. They lost their residency. The Chinese embassy doesn't give them extension their passports. They tell them go to China. So many of them managed to go to Turkey or somewhere else. This is the practice. And through the Chinese surveillance and technological capability, they have already every Uyghur's personal information in abroad, including Central Asian and Saudi Arabia. Because in Saudi Arabia, for example, there are many Uyghurs living there, and there are Saudi citizens, but still says Chinese immigrant or Bukhari or Uyghur. We have right now some families contacting in Turkey somewhere from Afghanistan, Mazar-i Sharif, more than 26 to 80 families. They're living there almost 40 years. But they're afraid because the China's Taliban very close relationship, or Taliban harm them or deport them to China. They want to leave Afghanistan. This is their fear.
In your report, you also talk about Western corporate giants. So are you saying that the PRC are also buying their silence?
Yes. China has invested more than 40 years in two things. One is to corrupt Western politicians, stealing their technology, and installing their own people in those big companies' CEOs, or their wives, or their employees are from China. So if you have today, like a Hilton company, Hilton Hotels, building a hotel in Hotel, where I'm from, where the mosques were destroyed. And we asked them not to do it. They doing it because fear of Chinese money. The same is in Hollyoaks, NBA. And I spent more than 19 years in Germany. Tragically, Germany has this genocide history. But still, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, or Adidas, Boss, who designed the clothes for the Nazis, they're doing business in East Turkestan.
So are you saying that these corporates are denying that anything is happening regarding alleged crimes against humanity, or are they ignoring the information or evidence out there?
As you know, I recently closely watched a hearing in Washington, US Congress. They invited several big companies' CEOs and asked them those questions. They didn't answer. They were so silent on China. But if there's any social issue in America or in Western, they will talk it, they will sponsor it. But if they come to China, they are very silent. I think they will lose their own money, or the company money, and the money bringing them silent.
You also mentioned in your report the Winter Olympics are upcoming next year. Are you proposing a similar argument for them, that they are, the PRC have bought their silence as well on this issue regarding the Uyghur, or what is your point?
I'm so happy you are asking me this question. Look, 2008, there was a Beijing Olympic where the China started its muscle to show the world. From that time on, they said, okay, we developed us, we have enough money, we know how the world or the Western country, we can influence them. And from that time on, they seeing Olympics like a propaganda for their image, what they 1939 did to the Nazis in Berlin. The 2022 Winter Olympic, in these circumstances, when we look China, they doing what they doing in Turkestan, in Tibet, in Mongolia, even on Han Chinese people in Hong Kong, and against threatening the Taiwan. In this circumstance, to give them Olympics to propagate for their own image, it will be a disaster.
I remember in 2008 Olympics that ethnic minorities did figure as part of the show, the sporting spectacle. What is your view in terms of next year's Olympics? Will ethnic minorities, including the Uyghur, be invited to participate in any kind of presentation or show or spectacle?
You know, right now I live in the US. We went some time ago outside and I saw Indian people, their museum. Some tourists taking picture with them. I denied to take picture with them because they reminded me what's right now happening in Turkestan. They will use our clothes, our music, our best food to show the world they are fine. At the same time, they destroying this culture and letting people disappear.
So that
I think they will show, let some Uyghurs happy dancing like this. I think.
as part of the
I think
propaganda.
from the past, what they did, I can just project it.
Okay, to move on to the comment you make about the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He made the comment, the situation of a country's human rights shall be judged by its people rather than other countries based on their own preferences. Now, China, PRC, are also signatories to international conventions, which are basically saying things like crimes against humanity, genocide, has to be an international decision. So can you elaborate on what appears to me like a contradiction?
Yes, I'm very surprised that the UN didn't say anything about this argument, because it is the China's signatory on many UN agreements. And if China's Foreign Ministry Wang Yi says this code, it shows they already seeing the universal freedom, universal speech of movement, freedom, and the values is collapsed. They're saying the next world order will be totalitarian. And when he says this, where he says in Central Asia, with the meeting with the Iranian, Saudi Arabian countries, they right now, you know, we cannot go through the Chinese internet web, or Chinese people are not free to join world internet system. They have own firewall internet system. They proposing to authoritarian countries like Iran, in Central Asian countries, especially Tajikistan, to build them this firewall system. I can imagine next to future, some Iranian dissident will be not able to talk their loved one in Iran. This is common. And for your question, you know, this is the reality. It shows China's policy. If you look back, China did everything what they planned and what they said. But in the liberal wars or free wars, never took them serious. Just imagine if we do business with them, if they middle class grow up, they will become like us. But from that time on, when the Deng Xiaoping began to cheat Western countries in the 70s, they had planned 5 years plan, 6 years plan, 7 years plan. They did it. And when the Chinese foreign minister says universal value is collapsing, they mean it, in my analysis.
Okay, I have two more questions. One is on the Chinese Islamic Association. You write that in order to sinicize Islam, the Chinese Islamic Association has led the demolition of the domes and minarets on the few mosques and masjids left standing. Now, what kind of Islam are they promoting? And in that kind of Islam, is Ramadan allowed, for instance? Is a headscarf allowed? Because everything else we're hearing is that in Xinjiang, these are not allowed. Is it just in Xinjiang?
You know, when I begin here, I said, Assalamu alaikum. I'm allowed here to say Assalamu alaikum. You are not, as a Muslim, say Assalamu alaikum in my country. If you say Assalamu alaikum, you are religious extremists. You have some mental illness. What the Chinese Islamic Association doing is covering up. They going to the friendly governments to China, particularly to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, everywhere. They talking to them, we are free, we enjoy our religion, everything's fine, you can see the mosque there, but there are some separatists, some terrorists, do you have this own things, and like this. But before, that's doing in Islamic countries, but 2 weeks ago, I live in Virginia. There is a Adam Center as a big Islamic society in Virginia. They have 10 to 20 mosques to run. And they supporting us. We were good, close relationship with them. And the head of this organization get a visit from Beijing, a Hui Muslim, so-called Hui scholar Muslim, went to them, said, look, the China, CCP, and the Uyghurs have problem. Uyghur Muslims are separatists. We Hui Muslims are not. Right now, Chinese government repressing them, but they threatening us very good. If you cooperate with the Uyghur Muslims, may China repress us too. What this shows? This shows Chinese United Front religious department sending their employee on the so-called Islamic scholar, not disinformed the Islamic country or the institution in Islamic country, but they going in Islamic societies in Western country too. This head of the Adam Center was a little bit thinking, you know what he says? What the cost of benefit? If I support Uyghurs, maybe China already doing this, and they begin to repression the other Hui Muslims. You know how the Chinese CCP's mentality to disinform and they bring the other people under control. This shows their thinking, yes.
So to return to the BRI, we are in Europe, and I need to just, I know you were asked to look at the Middle East and Central Asia, but there are countries, particularly Greece, Italy, Hungary, and of course this country and several others. Are you also proposing that the PRC are buying the silence of such countries in Europe?
We are here, the UK were one of the EU before, right now anymore. If you look in EU, one of the 7G countries is Italy. Italy bankrupted by the CCP. If you look by Proto, there are many Chinese companies. They producing their goods and product in China, bringing to Italy those special economic zones to get just, stamp made in Italy. Through that, they destroyed Italian mid-sized economy. They were very good in home goods and furniture and cloths. They're all gone. They built highways in Montenegro, in Middle Europe. Right now, Montenegro cannot pay the cost, and maybe China will take over, or Brazil pay for it. And if you look, Indonesia, they are under the Chinese influential right now. Similar in Malaysia, the former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad from Malaysia, he went to Beijing because the former government of his cabinet or government already had a treaty with China about the BRI, Silk Road project. And Mahathir told the Chinese, look, this is not good for us. The project given in China, the project will take the Chinese company. The Chinese company will build the project. Chinese employer working there, and their money will paid by the Chinese company. What we get? Just the debt to pay it? And he came back, and as you know, in Malaysia, there are many Chinese Chinese origin Malaysians. They had small parties. They checked their support from Mahathir. Mahathir lost his cabinet. So China, if says, I'm not interfering in your government, already doing is in Malaysia. And when we look in Sri Lanka, the ports were beautifully built. Sri Lanka couldn't pay it. China took it for the next 100 years. And when we look in the Gawadar port in Pakistan, leased for 40 years for China, and China can deploy their military there. Because China has this law, every big China company must collaborate with People Liberation Armies. It means any investment deal or any deal with China is deal with People Liberation Armies.
Thank you for your evidence.
The Uyghur people are in the way of the Belt and Road Initiative, aren't they?
Yes.
Let's use the word persecution just for the purposes of this question. Are they being persecuted because they're in the way of the Belt and Road Initiative, or are they being persecuted because they are the Uyghur people?
They are persecuting, I think in my analysis, because the Uyghur people knows from their heavy paid experience how to warn other countries coming danger from China. To conquer Central Asian, they have to destroy Uyghur people. Because Uyghur people, we are in the Silk Road. We had many religions.
Well, precisely. Forgive my interrupting you. Are you saying that they're being persecuted, same use of the word just for these purposes? Are you saying they're being persecuted simply because they're a block in the road? Is that why they're being persecuted?
They are persecuting because they are owner of this land and they're blocking them to go west.
Let me try and get to the same topic. Imagine an area of China away from all the Dagestans and Kazakhstans, no minerals, and there's the Uyghur people. Would China bother to persecute them then?
I think yes, because in almost 136 years colonization by China, Uyghurs lived many genocide, many tragic days, and you know, China knows what they did to Uyghurs people. They are afraid of the Uyghurs people as a people.
And then one question of detail. You spoke of successful efforts by the PRC to extradite people back into China. What happened to them when they were returned to China? Do you know?
For example, Hossein Jalil was deported to China from Uzbekistan. He's sentenced for life prison. He's Canadian citizen, sitting right now in jail. And for example, some of the students they deported to China, and they are sentenced or in concentration camps.
Is any of them, to your knowledge, living free in China, having been extradited?
No, nobody.
Mr. Sabi, we return to you 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think the questions that I intended to ask has already been raised, so we can release the witness if there is no more questions.
Well, just checking that nobody's had a second thought. Mr. Idris, thank you very much for coming to give your evidence today. Your evidence is now concluded, and I think we're going to take a break, aren't we?
Yes, can we limit the break to 15 minutes, please?
15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.